So Sebastian, really good to have you on the show. I really appreciate you getting up this morning from Dubai. It's amazing how we can do these podcasts. I'm over in Sydney, you're in Dubai, and we've got all our listeners in the UK, but welcome on the show.
Amazing to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, like we were saying just before we started, it's nice to be able to do a morning podcast, right? Because most of mine are afternoon or evening. So the time zone kind of works for me.
That's awesome. Well, I know you're a morning guy. You were half five this morning, was it? Is that a usual wake up time for you?
Yeah, I mean, 5 a.m. In the summer here, I tend to then get out a lot earlier. So I'll get up sort of 4:30, that sort of time. Start the day with a 1 or 2 hour walk, just to try and beat the heat, because I take the dogs out. So, it's just a great way to start the day, right? 2 hour walk. I tend to do a lot of journaling, a lot of writing, a lot of creating content as I walk. Not filming, but just writing notes. Ideas, that sort of stuff. I tend to be quite creative in the morning. So yeah, the morning time for me is really great to spend on my own, really.
I'm 100% a big believer in mornings. I think for me, yeah, that you win the morning. They say that you win the day.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So yeah, I love early mornings too. I'm a 5:30 guy at the moment. So yeah, I don't think I'll do any earlier than that. But yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And
you basically got to sacrifice your evening. That's it, really. I mean, I've got to go to bed the same time as my kids, who are 3 and 5, in order to get enough sleep, right? And if they want to stay up, I'm kind of looking at the clock, thinking it's past my bedtime. So it's a little bit backwards here, but it works for me.
It does work, yeah. Well done. So, Sebastian, as I said in the introduction, you've achieved some incredible stuff in your business at the moment. And although it's not construction related, there's some incredible business lessons that my listeners are going to be able to learn from your story and how you've developed and grown your business over the years. So we know, well, I say we know where you're at now. Maybe actually you could just tell us where Warrior Academy is at the moment. How many sort of staff have you got, and how many did you call them dojos, is it, or academies?
Yeah, dojos, offices. So we started 13 years ago in the UK, mostly in village halls in Somerset and Wiltshire. It's scaled quite quickly to about 500 students in the first kind of 8 years, but we were staying in rural England, right? So we hadn't expanded into any big cities at that point. So I really wanted to test it somewhere urban. At the time, we had a team of about 4 or 5 instructors and admins who were looking after the business, and I kind of stepped back. But because I was outsourcing all the technical delivery, I wasn't really earning that much in order to enjoy my life and do all the things I wanted to do. So I was kind of at that glass ceiling where I'd outsourced all the work, so I had lots of time, but now I didn't have that much money. So I didn't really have the balance I wanted. So I wanted to grow the business and test it somewhere urban. It was going to be London, and then I decided to expand it into Dubai after a long weekend here, where I kind of assessed the opportunities here. And yeah, pretty quickly then moved it to Dubai. I started working with the royal family over here, who found us online, because we were offering something quite unique through character development, using martial arts as a vehicle. So that's kind of our USP. And we started sort of beginning of 2019, a year before COVID, grew the business to about 250 students. And then COVID hit, and suddenly we kind of lost everything overnight. We had to pivot online, but it really made us, that moment of transition from having the business, losing it, and then having to really dive into that fear to then regrow the business, re-evolve the business, forced us into commercial real estate, which is quite interesting because everyone was running away from commercial real estate, right? Everyone was running away from offices, so I saw that as a good opportunity to actually get good deals on offices, which is what we did. Rather than renting halls, we then started to refurb offices, turn them into training academies and dojos, and we built the first character development center in the Middle East here in Dubai. So very quickly that, from 2020 to now, sort of 2.5, 3 years later, it grew to about 1,000 students a week in Dubai. We've got about 6 offices in Dubai, and we've now launched in Abu Dhabi. We've got 3 there. We're in the middle of launching in Doha. Hopefully by the end of this year, we can open up an academy there. And we've also got work in Saudi Arabia and Neom on the line, and Riyadh coming up as well. So there's loads going on. We've got scholarship academies with the charity work we do in Kenya, Nepal, Sri Lanka, soon India, and Malawi as well. So we've got about 50 staff, about 10 offices across sort of 3 continents.
Wow, yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And what a story of amazing growth, really. Would you put it down to purely the move over to Dubai, or do you think you could have actually applied those principles in the UK? Where do you think, what triggered it, that sort of growth?
So the way I explain doing the business here versus doing it in the UK is a bit like pushing a snowball, right? In the UK, it really felt like, and it's only when I look back and I can see this, it really felt like I was pushing a snowball up a hill, specifically for my industry. You know, hiring people is expensive in the UK. It's pretty much the same price for an instructor out here in Dubai relative to what we would earn. You've got the commercial real estate, which is much more expensive in the UK. You've got business tax, which of course is a stinger in the UK. Then you've got corporation tax, you've got VAT on top of that, and then income tax as well. So there's the whole tax against you. There's the commercial real estate against you. And then what you can charge out here is relatively a lot more than what you can charge in the UK. And for the services we provide, we can charge more. So we've got all those things working in our favor over here. But then you've got to really take into consideration that you've got to be a very patient person. There's lots of cultural challenges and differences out here, which you need to be acutely aware of. And you need to be very, very quick at moving. So it's not as easy to say as if you've got a business in the UK, it will work in Dubai. It's a very, very competitive environment here. You need to be very patient and you need to understand the cultural complexities that exist here. But if you can do all of that and you're the right character, then it's a great place to be.
Yeah, it's incredible, just listening to the story there. And how did you say it was you were only over there for a weekend or a week, was it, before you made
I was here for a long weekend, and now I kind of see my friends doing this to me. So I judge them, sorry. I was here for a long weekend with a good friend of mine, helping him out with his business and traveling around and going on a few adventures and all that sort of stuff. And I was on a boat, and we'd been pondering the idea of starting the business in Dubai. It was just kind of just an idea. And then on this like small yacht, just enough 4 or 5 people, and we're having a few beers. Suddenly, at night, all the fireworks go off and this incredible sight in front of us. And I just sat there thinking to myself, I would never see this in Wiltshire or Somerset. And so I said to myself, look, I've got to launch the business here, right? Everything's kind of lining up and it's just the perfect time to do it. Yeah. There's never a perfect time to do anything, right? But it just felt to me like this was the opportune moment to make a big change. That the majority of the work in the UK had been the technical delivery, had been outsourced. So I don't need to be there physically. We were in a position where my wife wasn't working as much, so she was working with me in the business, so she could actually come with me. Although there was a transition, sort of 3 or 4 months where I had to be here on my own, do lots of little trips. But essentially, I said to her, look, a few weeks, we're going to be moving to Dubai, and that's what happened.
Wow, yeah, and what a supportive wife as well to to be able to go and do that. And you need to be aligned, don't you, to make such a big move like that? Not everyone.
Oh man, do you know what? It's incredible for me to see the impact of having a super aligned, supportive partner in my life. And I see so many other people who don't have that. Right? They can be the best business people in the world. They can have an amazing idea, be super creative, have all the energy and passion, but their partner isn't aligned to them. They don't support them. They don't do everything in their power to make that work and to give them the extra push and even hold their partner to a high standard, right? Like it's also having a partner who says to you, I believe you can do this. I think you can do this. You need to push yourself to do this. You need to be the sort of person who can step up into that role. And I think having that level of support and accountability and trust from someone in your very, very close team is massively important. And that's certainly helped me a lot.
Yeah, hugely important. I guess on the other end of the scale, if you've not got anyone who supports you, you're in a constant battle, aren't you? Imagine you're pushing a weight uphill all the time. That's what it'd feel like, wouldn't it, if you had an unsupportive partner? So I think that's absolutely crucial. And that's testament to.
Honestly, I would say it's like the top 3 bits of advice, right? Like today we're going to be talking about advice and what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Just don't marry the wrong person, number 1. Do you know what I mean? Like if you just hit that perfectly, your life will be better. Even if you don't, build the big business that you think you're going to build. It's not just about that, is it? It's about building a future and building a life around you with the right person. And ultimately, your business will grow because of that. It's a real asset to have someone like that in your team. But yeah, having Vicky in my life, who was so flexible and just up for it, right? Like, yeah, okay, let's move to Dubai. Was a really good plus. Well, the other week I said to her, look, why don't we move to Bali? And she was like, we've just moved here. So there's got to be a balance, right?
Brilliant. So I guess from, people looking from the outside now, they see what you've managed to create with Warrior Academy and your foundation, and you're doing some incredible stuff. And it all looks like it's going amazing, and it is going amazing, but it wasn't always there, was it? As you said, you've had some real difficulties and struggles. Just wanted to talk to them a little bit, just so we can see what lessons we can draw from them. So where would you say, have you had some real difficult times in business where you just thought, should I chuck this in? Is this right for me? Where have you had those occasions at all?
Yeah, so initially growing the business from lifestyle to performance, right? From a team of 5 to 50, that you reach this glass ceiling. And I spoke about that in the talk in London that I did at the Lifestyle Business Summit, which we spoke about a second ago. And that glass ceiling is where you feel like there's nothing you can do to break through it. It's like you're outsourcing a lot of the technical delivery, but you then don't really have enough money to enjoy your life, and you're kind of spinning plates. It's like, what do I do to actually grow it? And you can have all the passion and purpose in the world, but without the right strategy, like, you're never going to break through it. So you've got to find the right mentors to help you break through that. But certainly at that time, I started seeking passive income. I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing. I wanted to grow a business, but this business seemed like it was stuck. And so sometimes when your business feels like it's stuck, you have to take massive action, right? And it's this kind of balance for me between massive action and doing sustainable daily habits, which you do the rest of your life, right? Often the small little changes are the things that make the biggest impact because they stick with you and they compound. But sometimes you need big, massive action to kind of get momentum and get things going. So yeah, that was definitely the first one. The kind of lifestyle to performance, glass ceiling would be the first one. I think as you grow, then you then start running into cultural challenges. So we ran into cultural issues internally. Where we had a team who had been with us from the start in Dubai, a team of 5. That was growing in the Dubai office to a team of 30. The pressure was higher because it was more about performance. We're getting funding in. We've got to make it work. We've got to expand. We've got to hit targets. Whereas before it was less about that because it was a small team of 5, impacting less lives, but more flexibility for the staff, right? So, more procedures, more policies, all that, slightly more corporate feel, but more professional and more lives impacted ultimately. So that transition for a lot of people, there tends to be some challenges that crop up, whether it's an asset deficiency with their procedures, their policies, their IP, their tech, their marketing, their sales, their admin, operations, whatever it is. For us, it was culture and it was HR. And we had more and more HR issues coming up. And, the more we did to bend over backwards to help everyone and give them all the little things that they wanted, it's like the more issues we had. People wanted a longer lunch break, so we'd give that. And then there would be another complaint about wanting to have work shorter days. And then there'd be another, more holiday. And suddenly it's like, well, the more you give an inch, and people would want a meter, whereas the 5 people who were with you originally would never ask for so much. So there's the cultural shift, both from the top of the team, the leadership team, and the bottom, people who are just joining in. And it's this kind of strange feeling of, this has changed so much. And people clinging on to the past, not believing in or wanting to be a part of the future. And so really it's like the ship sailing, who's jumping aboard and going with us, right? And so you've got to have that kind of approach of, at the end of the day, we are moving in this direction, who's joining us on that adventure. And there are lots of little things we did around culture to help us with that. But ultimately it comes down to lots of uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, when you're scaling to that pace and that speed, I can imagine, I had it myself when I was bringing different people on, and we were bringing people on just to fill seats at one point because we were growing pretty quick, and they were just the wrong people, just the wrong cultural fit. And if they don't fit, it was funny because I did read a book, and what they were saying was that you need to be really careful on who you hire, because sometimes you only hire people like you, like your personality. And I was reading this book and I thought, that's interesting. And then the next hire I made, I hired someone that was nothing like me at all.
Oh, really?
like complete outlier. I thought he was a genius, but he was a bit of a con artist. But it was the worst decision I ever made because I went against my gut.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe I shouldn't read those, listen to everything I read in a book.
Do you know what? It's interesting, right? Your gut feeling, I've really started to lean into this more. And so recently I turned down a really good opportunity because it just didn't feel right. On paper, it looked great, right? And it was a merger and acquisition, and on paper it looked great. And it was just something inside me said, not the right fit. And so I just explained, sorry, I'm going to pull out now. It's my gut's telling me this is not the right path to get on. It's not the right fit. And so I stepped away. And I think you've really got to trust your gut. Where it comes from, I don't know. But often, those little niggling thoughts in the back of your head, they can give you an insight into something which you're not quite aware of, but your subconscious is. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to hiring, look, I've made every single mistake in the book, I think, when hiring, especially when you're hiring fast, right? Because now we hire really slow. It's almost like we're trying to stop people from joining us when we're hiring because there's so many little steps in order for us to make sure we've got the right person. Because when you bring them on, they don't just impact the business and you, they impact the whole team and the culture and everything. It's a massive deal to bring someone onto the team. You treat it like a professional football team, right? You bring on the wrong character and suddenly bang, you're out the league. So for me, it's when we scaled from 5 to 50 people in a period of 24 months, it's like we're hiring 2 people every month. Some months we were hiring 7 or 8 people. I think one month we hired 11 people, and it's huge jumps like that, which you don't realize the impact that can make culturally. But yeah, every single mistake we made it, and I think we've fortunately made it. I've made it quite young, and I made it within a 24-month period, which I can now use to leverage, and that knowledge I can use to improve the business and improve the future and improve the way in which we do things. But certainly, bringing on the right people and doing the due diligence, right? Doing the D&D and phoning up those references, and we even do like psychosomatic tests and stuff now, which is like they're joining MI5, right? But it's like we want to know everything before we bring someone into our team, which we're so protective of.
Yeah, and I think that's so wise. Like we say, if we get it wrong, it's not just going to impact your culture, but financially it can be, seriously painful, can't it? If you make that wrong choice. So I think that's really wise. Just wanted to talk to you about, obviously related to culture, you've got to get everyone to buy into what you're trying to achieve as a business. And you're a company that's really going places and impacting tens of thousands of people, and probably a lot more as we go into the future. So talk to me a little bit more about how you found that purpose in the company. What is the purpose? What do you want to achieve, and how do you instill those values in your staff?
Yeah, so people get hung up on purpose, I think. And I think either they don't necessarily believe in what they're doing, or they want to find a deeper meaning in what they're doing because they tie a lot of their success to making money, right? A lot of people, they're in business to make money, and that's likely because they haven't solved personal wealth for themselves, and maybe they aren't financially free. I think once you get to that level, and it's like you've got enough money to live off comfortably, what do you really want to do? I think then your mind starts changing, the cogs start turning in a different way. I find a lot of entrepreneurs when they are financially free suddenly, and they've solved the problem of making money for themselves and their family and maybe their closer community, they start to think, who else can I impact? What other problems can I solve? But I would definitely say that a bit like the niche. I always say this, right? Micro niche. People search for a micro niche, and it's like they'll sit there with a pen and paper, for the whole day trying to figure out their perfect micro niche, and then they'll go to the market. No one wants it, and the reality there is your niche finds you, right? You have a great idea, you keep it fairly broad enough that it gets attention, but it's broad enough. Go to the market. And then you see what actually hits. Okay, well, actually, I enjoyed working with these people. I made the most money with these people. I made the biggest impact with these people. Okay, that narrows it down from 10 to 1. Now we just double down on that. And then the kind of niche just develops and narrows down as you go. So the niche finds you, right? And so the same I feel about the purpose. I think that when I started teaching martial arts, it was about martial arts. I loved martial arts. I wanted to be active and fit. And I love the idea of training for competitions and all this sort of stuff. And then I got to a stage where I started to realize character development was such a huge part of the puzzle here. And the real impact, the high impact side of martial arts is developing someone's character. You know, the kicking and the punching is like, cool, okay, great. You know, someone can kick and punch and defend themselves, but you change their character and develop their soft skills, that person will go on and do incredible things in their life and impact lots of people around them, get them through some really difficult things, develop more resilience, develop what we call a black belt character. So I started going down that route. Initially, I was working with young teenage men, really, who were sort of 16 to 18. You know, they were very much living difficult lives, substance abuse, domestic abuse, often on the street, all this sort of stuff. Within a year, we made a huge change to their lives through the Thai boxing club I set up. And I realized the impact there was their character, right? And then it was like, well, okay, what if I wanted to work with them when they were younger, plant the seeds of a black belt character, developing their confidence, conduct, concentration, what we call the 3 Cs from a younger age? What would then happen before they get to 18? Like if I work with them from the age of 8 to 18 on that stuff, would they be in that position? Okay, so an extra decade of potential support and direction and a moral compass over time snowballs. And now you've got this compounding effect where they're not just, you know, living for themselves or living for the weekend, they're living for their community, their families, the people around them. They're doing incredible things in the world. And they're able to overcome previous trauma and all this sort of stuff. So that was the second stage of developing my purpose. And then it got to the stage where, okay, well, you know, we're now building a business, right? And the business is doing well. And we've got hundreds of clients. We've got tens of staff. And so about 10% of our clients, our customers, our members in the UK were on scholarships. So the purpose there, the purpose piece was 10% of our students were getting free tuition because they were going through something really difficult: divorce, separation, financial issues. We were working with welfare officers. We were partnering with children's hospices, giving training to the siblings of those kids who were terminally ill, all sorts of incredible stuff like that. And so I started to see the impact of that and how it lit up our team, and they really enjoyed working with us, and so did we. And so the philanthropy side started to really take over. And then to the point where we are now, 13 years down the line, I then said, look, 50% of my time is going to be in charity work, 50% is going to be commercial. The commercial side's pretty straightforward, right? Like we've got a very simple model. We know what we're doing. We know it works. We know exactly who to hire. We know how to market it. We know where to put the money, where to scale it. And I try and keep things as simple as possible so we can grow in the most effective way. That's fine, right? If your head can take on more space than just growing commercial, then you can start developing a charity, which is a whole other game. And so I launched the Bates Foundation, and I hired my dad, who was previously in the army, and then he was running one of the largest army charities in the UK, doing really great at that. But he didn't feel that aligned to the charity after a while. I think that he wanted more freedom. He loved the work he was doing, make a big impact, but ultimately he wanted more freedom and flexibility in his life. And so that's what I offered him as COO of the Bates Foundation. And within 6 months, the goal was within 3 years to go from no students in developing countries to 50% of our members being in developing countries around the world. That was a 3 to 4 year goal. We did that in 6 months. So now 50% of our members are in orphanages, homeless shelters, slums, rural primary schools where they walk 3 hours to get to school. And the other 50% are paying members in the UAE and in the UK. So the purpose kind of evolves, right? The reason I tell that story is because if you had asked me 13 years ago what the purpose was, it would be train people for competition so they can be tougher, stronger, more resilient, right? A couple of years down the line, transform teenagers so that they can live better lives and work on them developing their conduct. A few years down the line, work with young people so they don't have those issues that the teenagers did by developing their character. A little bit down the line would be the kind of philanthropy work, and then boom, we're essentially building an organization which is designed to teach young people that they can and should impact the world. That's our vision, right? So the Warrior Academy is very aligned to the Bates Foundation, and then it's got a 100-year plan to be on every single continent around the world, to work with young people to really teach them that they can make an impact.
Wow, that's incredible. I think you've just explained that so simply, because sometimes we can read books like Finding Your Why by Simon Sinek and things like that. And I know I've read it myself and thinking, you know, what is it? What is it that I really want to do? And I often say to my clients, there's nothing wrong. If your purpose is, I just want to create, at the moment, it might be, I just want to create the best life and experience for me and my family for now, then that's your purpose, isn't it? And then that may change. Then it's right now I want to create the best, the best experience for my clients. And then it might be whatever else you're going to be doing. So I think it's great.
And people often, they often sit there, right, and try and come up with a really grand purpose, which sounds impressive, right? Like I want to change the world and do this, and it's like, do you actually want to do that? Because that is 50 years of work, right? Or do what you really want to do is to live an inspired life and teach your kids that they can go against the grain and create their own life around them? Or do you know what I mean? It's what do you actually really want? And exactly what you said, it's it could be a lot more local than such a grand idea. I think when I first started out, it wasn't, impacting the whole world, but it's only evolved that way because we've seen it work. I think initially you want a fairly realistic purpose, right? Something that really lights you up, but is within grasp.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So just tell me about, you mentioned you've got a 100-year plan potentially with the War Academy or the Bates Foundation. What do you mean by that? Are you actually planning out?
Yeah, so here's the way we see it, right? When I sat my dad down and I said to him, I want to build a charity that outlives us both, right? There's a legacy aspect there. I want to work on something with him that continues after he dies and then continues after I die. And we just pass on this Bates Foundation to the next generation, So the 100-year aspect of that is that it's designed to be very sustainable and to continue. The other aspect is that we want it to kind of be self-funding. So we've built into the Warrior Academy, about 10% of the profit from the Warrior Academy all goes to the charity. So as the Warrior Academy grows, and we're designing the Warrior Academy to grow without any extra funding, without any extra support from me, it's designed to grow, and it's got an amazing leadership team in there who are looking after it and growing it. So the more I focus on developing the business and making sure the business is sustainably growing without me, the more the charity will grow without me as well. So this is kind of flywheel effect between the two linking together, which is the 100-year aspect. The other thing that we always talk about is one of the most important things about working in developing countries is building trust. So when we go in, what we don't want to be is, the Western guy coming in and saving the day and here's some money and that's it, right? We go in and we interview locals and then we provide employment. We've got about 16 full-time instructors in developing countries, mostly in Nepal and Kenya at the moment. And so we really want this to be a charity where young people in those rural communities look up to role models within the same community and see this as something that they can go on to achieve as well. Now, when you go through the black belt journey with the Warrior Academy and you get a black belt as a child, you're 16 years old, you get a black belt, you are guaranteed a job with us. So that makes us quite unique, right? We've got about 25 to 30 assistant instructors around the world right now who have gone through the 8-year journey, become instructors, and then they teach part-time, and then they can do a 1 to 2 year course. By the time they're 18, they become a full-time instructor. We've got one student who's just done that, and he's now a full-time instructor on a great salary in Dubai. So we've got the proof that the system works, right? And then as they grow up, they then teach the next round of students going through it. So the big vision there is within 20 years, I would love for most of our clubs to be taught by students in developing countries who've gone through our program, had the Warrior Academy education, and now are moved around the world to teach and providing employment for them around the world. But the other side of that is really when you do go into an orphanage, right? And here's the thing about orphanages that a lot of people don't realize, that a lot of them are corrupt. So you have an idea of, I'm going to donate to an orphanage, or I'm going to donate to this charity, that charity, whatever. When you actually go there, and the reason I know this is because we've been there and we've done it, and we visited like 20 orphanages, and we've really done a lot of research, boots on the ground, backpacking around Africa, road tripping type charity work, right? Almost like Warrior Academy missionaries. But yeah, as we started to learn and meet people who have been doing it for 20 years and really got stuck into it, we started to realize, well, actually, when you go to a lot of these desperate countries and desperate cities, one of the things that they really, really need is money. And so a lot of these orphanages are actually set up in order to get money from people. And so they're not necessarily there for care for the children. And so it's finding the right orphanages, right? And really, for me, it's the best way to do that is to work with other charities who have already vetted the orphanages. They've worked with them for 5-10 years. They've got people who have worked there, alongside them. They know them, they trust them, and they can really provide the right introductions. So we go straight in there and do the work we want to do with the right people. But once you've built that trust and you're in there, it's really, really hard if you're an entrepreneur and you're a problem solver, not to sit there, in an orphanage or a homeless shelter and think, what else can we solve here, right?
Yeah.
The reason, the reason only 20 out of the 300 kids at this rural primary school are turning up today is because they need to be working on the farm there, or they're not getting food here. They're not getting 2 meals, only getting 1 meal, or they need to. There's not enough medical care here, and so they or whatever it is, right? So you start to think, well, actually, what other problems can I solve? And so that's how I think we're going to start branching away from just doing Warrior Academy character and work, which is how we get into these various places and we build our program there with that flywheel effect. But then we start to branch out to hospitals, to schools, to medical care, to food, whatever it is.
Fantastic. Yeah. What an amazing opportunity for ones that potentially graduate through that program to, to be able to work in the, the foundation later on or in your academies. I think that's absolutely incredible. So just, I'm quite interested for myself, just knowing what you're actually doing in the classes to develop children's character and resilience, or is it literally just the training that develops that, or are you doing some other programs with them?
Yeah, so we've got a character development program which sits alongside the martial arts training. So martial arts training is one aspect of what we do. The other aspect of what we do is we build a daily habit routine into their lives. So the first thing you do, a parent joins us and we analyze their breakthrough area. So they go through the whole system where we go in and we basically find out a score, a percentage for their conduct, concentration and confidence. The lowest of those three tends to be their breakthrough area. For the first 3 months, we really try to transform that particular area. And then they go on a course with us and we measure every 2 months, each 3 areas again, so that we can incrementally improve it. We do workshops, we write books, we've got lots of experts who help parents. We've got a parent support network alongside it all. And then what we're now building is transition events. So if you look at character development, for me, it's lots of small decisions every day. So it's the sort of daily habits routine, the goal setting cadence, all that sort of stuff. And then it's big one-off memorable events, right? It's a bit like what I said to you about, small consistent actions throughout throughout your life and massive action, one-off events, right? And if I look back at the things that really transformed my character, it was probably some of the adventures I went on. So when I was younger, hiking across Dartmoor for 50 miles or 40 miles, or the cycling across the Sahara Desert with my dad and his army mates when I was 17, or cycling across around Turkey, or all these big adventures I went on, base jumping, or amazing things like that, which really shapes my character. But certainly when I was younger, it's the big events, and it wasn't necessarily just martial arts. What I found is that if you put a child through a martial arts program and they become really good at martial arts, they'll end up doing 10 to 20 hours a week in the dojo, right? Now, if you get a child doing 10 to 20 hours a week in the dojo, and then they become a national champion, maybe they're in the GB team, whatever it is, what I then find is they become really confident in that small bubble, right? They fill that room with their confidence. That their confidence stretches as far as that room. It's like, this is my place. I own this space. Right? There's ego involved with that. Someone else comes in and it's like, this is clearly their space, right? This is where they're comfortable. Put them into a competing arena, pretty similar, right? Yes, it's big and it's different. It's a good transition to another event, but it's a different environment. So it's a slight test, but it's still within the same comfortability range. You take someone like that and you put a backpack on them and you make them walk 50 miles across Dartmoor, and suddenly you see a very, very different side of them. It's like suddenly all that ego and confidence crumbles because they've now got to perform in a different light. So what I want to really build into the Warrior Academy is these big transition events. So when a junior becomes a senior after 2 years of being with us, one event, like a half-day outdoor leadership adventure event. When a senior becomes an advanced student, which takes another 2 years, a full-day event, which is really arduous. When an advanced student becomes a black belt, we're talking an overnight experience where they have to survive in the desert and they've got to look after the juniors and the seniors. And it's those memorable one-off events, which I think forces a student to bring the lessons from the dojo to the home and the school life and actually apply them in a real life setting. So it's really looking at it like martial arts is a great vehicle for developing character, but it's just one of the tools that we use.
That is absolutely fantastic. I mean, as a parent myself, and as a parent, you always want to develop your children and bring them up the best way. But what you've just described there is incredible. And I think that anyone listening to this, have you still got academies in the UK as well?
Yeah, we've got academies all across Wilkes, Somerset, Bath, Salisbury.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So yeah, I think anyone listening to this who's got kids that want to put them through a program like that, I think it's life-changing, isn't it? It truly is. And yeah, it sounds amazing. Just wanted to touch on something that's obviously you've developed into your business, but it's something that comes from your personality, is the habits, the daily habits. Now, I'm a follower of you on social media, so I see what you're doing daily. Your daily schedule for someone who is so busy in business is incredible, how you manage to look after yourself and your fitness schedule that you sort of have. How important is fitness to you compared to your business? I mean, when you look at the two, they clearly align, don't they? You're a peak performer in both. So, talk to me about your fitness schedule and why that's so important.
Yeah, so when I first started my business, I was young, in my 20s. I was 19, and throughout my 20s, fine, smashing fitness, smashing training, which is a part of what I did all the time. I would always lift weights. I was always doing martial arts. I was always interested in keeping fit and active. That was just normal for me. But then as the business grew, we grew from a team of 5 to 50. I was still lifting weights, but diet was slipping slightly. I was enjoying the fact that I was earning more, so I was able to have better food in Dubai, go to restaurants, and all this sort of stuff, which before I wasn't able to do. And I think for me, the stress of the business and focusing on the business became more important than my health. And I think that business owners tend to go through that, where in order to actually make it grow, you've got to sacrifice everything, right? You've got to sacrifice sleep. Like you want to make this business work, forget it. You just got to absolutely smash it. You got to hustle and do all the grafting, and sometimes, yeah, you got to do that. That's the reality, especially when you're a startup. Then I'm now in a position, I guess, at 33 where, and fortunately I've done it young, whereas a lot of people, they don't figure out until in their 50s. My health is more important than my business. And if I really focus on my health, my business benefits. Like if I'm ill, I've then got to make high pressure decisions from a negative place, which then impacts other people negatively. So it's my responsibility to make sure that my health is completely optimal. Right? Like if I can really make sure my sleep is good, which is basically the foundation of everything you do in your life anyway, where you spend a third of your life, right, in bed. So you can make sure that's good. If your diet's good, so you've got more energy, you've got more longevity. Your training's good, so you feel good, you've got more energy and you're healthier. If you can tick all of these boxes, your business really has a huge growth. It's like, your business is responding to your health in a weird way. It's a symbiotic relationship. And habits form all of that. And it's interesting because, a lot of our chat's been about massive action versus small changes. And I think, like I said before, you need massive action to get going, but it's the small changes over time. This is why I don't believe in things like, New Year's resolutions and fad diets, and I'm going to do the 2-month challenge and that's it. When instead of doing the 2-month challenge where you don't eat any carbs for 2 months and hate your life, why don't you just eat a little bit less carbs and go for an extra 20-minute walk in the morning and do that for the rest of your life? Do you know what I mean? And it's making these tiny little changes, right? Little percentages here and there, which compound over time and make a huge, huge difference. When people look at my daily routine and they think I'm mental, and I don't blame them, because like it's a lot, right? I walk 25,000, 30,000.
Tell us what it is. Talk us through the timeline of how your day starts and what you're doing before you start work.
Yeah, so it really changes and depends on where I'm working, what I'm doing. I listen to my body now more than anything. If my kids are ill, then that changes things slightly as well. If I'm traveling a lot, things change. But I'll probably say a good 70% of the year, my routine is a little bit like this. I wake up sort of 5:30 without an alarm, normally because I go to bed at about 8:30. So I get a good 7-8 hours sleep in, which I track and I measure. Then I'll wake up 5:30. First thing I do is go outside. So fresh air and sunlight, you want to get first thing in the morning, right? In the summer here, I'll go out even earlier to avoid the heat so I can take the dogs out. I'll walk with the dogs for an hour and a half. I'll then come back and I'll have a shake, protein shake with a banana and some nuts and that sort of stuff. And then I will walk fast on a treadmill, about 6-7 kilometers an hour. So my body's warmed up. I can now walk a lot faster. So I'll do that for about an hour. So I'll do about 2.5 hour walk in the morning. I'll then have a coffee. I might do a little bit of work, sort of a podcast like this or a meeting, whatever it is. And then I'll go for another walk with my wife, and I'll walk with her for about an hour to an hour and a half. No phones, just talking, just quality time. one of the most important things as a business owner is being present, right? Like your partner doesn't want 3 hours of your time where you're not really there. They just want 20 minutes of your time where you're completely focused on them. So that's what I try and do on those walks, and I think that's really powerful. I've got an amazing relationship with my wife, and we're very, very aligned, like I spoke about, and a big part of that is down to the time we invest in each other. So there's a lot of walking, right? But and then after that,
what are we on now? About 3.5 hours of walking so far, are we? 3
yeah,
hours.
about 2.5 hours of walking so far. Yeah. But then in the afternoon, I'll get trained. Well, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, I'll get trained by my personal trainer who gives me some disgusting workouts. But it's normally an hour of very, very focused lifting. One of the great things about having a personal trainer is I don't really get injured anymore, right? When I was training on my own, I would get injured. I'd always be like, oh, I wonder if I can lift this much, or if I can lift that much. Even if I've got a little niggle on the shoulder, I'll still try and do a 1 rep max on a bench and push myself, right? Whereas I would probably say 20% of his job is to prevent me from doing too much, and the other kind of 80% is pushing me and forcing out those extra 3 to 5 reps, when my body's in the right time to do it, in the right state to do it. And then the bits of advice which he gives, which it's almost so simple. But when someone else tells you to do it, I mean, we always know this stuff, right? But it's like, have good sleep. You have to go to bed early to do that. Get off your phone. Have a good diet. Plan your diet in advance. Everyone knows what to do, right? It's not rocket science. But when someone else tells you to do it, you tend to stick to it. So for me, paying for accountability is vital. The daily habit routine, 25 to 30,000 steps a day, four training sessions in the gym, and I do about 7 cardio sessions a week. So I cycle for about 45 to 60 minutes, sometimes swimming, every day. And I stay at about 10% body fat. I get measured every 3 to 4 weeks, so I kind of use that as a benchmark. But yeah, I just have so much energy from doing that, right? And it's these little walks are where I download all the information from my brain. Then in the evening, it's the new routine I've now started is, I finish dinner at 7 p.m, whatever, with the kids. I turn all the lights off in the house, and I just put candles on in the rooms, right? So there's no artificial light at all. So for about 2 hours before I sleep, there's no TV, there's no phone. So I put my phone on airplane mode. I charge it up downstairs instead of upstairs, because it's so easy just to be like, I just want to check the time or whatever. But I have a clock in the room, like a digital clock, so I can see the time if I need to. And then I have no distractions. And it's weird when you start doing that, because suddenly it's like you're completely isolated from the rest of the world. And you say to yourself, well, I'm not going to look at my phone until the morning walk at 5 a.m. or whatever. So between 7 and 5, no one can contact you. And it's just quality time with the people you live with, which is really great. We're sitting there reading books, the candles on. It's a really nice atmosphere. And it slows you down, especially if you're like me and your head's so full of stuff, right? Like by 5 p.m, 6 p.m, your head's still full. You eat, and then you have that 2-hour transition where you slow everything down, and then you're ready to sleep. And it works really well. And I think measuring sleep as well, and measuring your steps and measuring your weight, having 3 or 4 metrics works really well. I know in business, metrics are vital, right? You measure your leads. Laps is a great example. Leads, appointments, presentations, sales. If you've read any of Daniel Priestley's oversubscribed or KPI stuff, which I know you have, it's something he talks about is the perfect week. And I apply the same thing to my health. So I look at it like, what's the perfect week? What's the perfect day? What's the perfect morning? What's the perfect evening? What's the perfect night? And I try and just seek perfection from a health point of view through each aspect of the day. Because ultimately, if you can do that, even if you have ups and downs, which are natural, some days you won't be able to do it. But if you can do that, your average over the week is really, really good. And so how do you make sure that you're hitting the targets and it's perfect? Well, you've got to have a few metrics, right? So your sleep's got to be good. It means you've got to be in bed probably 8.5 hours. You've got to be in bed so you can sleep about 7.5. Most people only sleep for 80% of the time they're in bed. You've got to make sure that you're wearing yourself in the morning, right? So as soon as you wake up, you go to the toilet and then you weigh yourself. Nice and easy. You've got to get your steps in, minimum 10,000. If you do less than 10,000, like, what are you doing, right? You're a human being. You've been given legs to use them. You need to use your body. All of the issues we've had in our lives, I guarantee 80% of them would go away if you just walked more than 10,000 steps a day. 15,000 minimum, right? Use your body for what it's made for. So steps, 10 to 15K minimum. Try and add 2K every couple of weeks, right? And then the training sessions, right? If you can get four decent lifting sessions in, or 3 if you're just starting out, full body or whatever, a week, you're on the right track. And then in diet, I try and eat the same things every day, because that stops me from having any variance. If I go out for a meal at a restaurant, I'll combine 2 meals in one. So I eat 4 meals a day. If I go out to a restaurant, I'll combine 2. Alcohol is another interesting one, right? Like, alcohol has a massive impact on stress levels. It raises your cortisol levels throughout the week. If you're in a position where you can say to yourself, right, I'm only going to drink once or twice a week, instead of doing a glass of wine in the evening or whatever, which I used to have a glass of wine with a meal in the evening, right? It was like a Mediterranean vibe in this house. But now I'll only drink twice a week, and I'll cut off at 6 p.m. So I know if I drink after 6 p.m., then what happens is, I struggle to sleep in the evening, or I wake up in the middle of the night and then I can't get back to sleep. So I'll make sure that I cut off at 6 p.m. and then I'll go on a long walk to try and burn off some of that excess alcohol. If I'm meeting up with friends, one of the easiest ways to do it is, if you want to do something on the weekend and you want to have a few drinks, do it at lunchtime. So by the time the evening comes, it doesn't disrupt your sleep. Have that cut off. So for me, those are the things that work really well. I see it similar to the samurai, right? Like the samurai, they would seek perfection in everything they did in their life, right? Like if they were painting, or if they were cooking, or if they were cleaning, they would try to do that perfectly. Like, what's the best way to mop this floor? What if I was going to mop this floor and it was going to be perfect? What's the best way to do that? If I was going to paint this picture, or I was going to clean these clothes, whatever it is, right? What's the best way to do that? What would be perfection in that? And I think the pursuit of perfection, as long as you're not, basing your success or failure purely on that, but the pursuit of it has an amazing impact on getting your average much, much higher. So that's how I kind of see business and bringing in the health as well, from a daily habit point of view.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm fascinated. I follow all sorts of people, David Goggins and all different ones that are on that pursuit of perfection and resilience in their own minds. And that was just like a little crash course for me then, what you just told me. So I'm gonna take all those notes and try and apply some of that in my life. That's really, really fascinating. So really enjoyed that. Sebastian, can you tell us a little bit about what you think the future holds for, what's the big goal for you for the Warrior Academy? Where do you see this sort of going over the next few years?
So short term, Doha. We've now started doing work in Saudi Arabia as well. We've been invited to NEOM on the line to do some corporate training, or corporate events. So we're going down the corporate road as well to train up execs and business owners and their teams on basically the things I spoke about, right? Bringing character development into the norm and making it a widespread focus. I think people don't necessarily look at character when they onboard people, when they hire people enough, and they measure soft skills to a degree, but we can help them with that. I think developing a daily habit routine that the business follows, but then each individual follows as well to optimize performance, that sort of stuff. So the corporate side is really interesting. That's what we're doing. Then the normal Warrior Academy centers, we're doubling down on character development even more. So we're focusing, like I said, on these transition events. And we've got 10 to 15 partnerships with some of the leading parenting experts in the world. So psychotherapists, psychologists, occupational therapists. We're talking speech therapists, SEN experts, basically best-selling authors, thought leaders, people who are really doing pioneering work. And that's a part of our program for our parents to access. So we're giving them that support. So doubling down on the character on the side, what we're doing, launching our academies in 8 cities across the Gulf. So we're looking at Doha next, and then Riyadh, Jeddah, Daman, Bahrain, Kuwait, maybe even in Oman as well. So expanding that. And then of course the charity side, we're trying to keep up with the charity right now because the charity is growing so quickly. Within 6 months, we've got 2,000 kids on the charity. So at the same time as that, we're looking for investments and donors as well. One of the things that I'm also building is a high net worth group of business owners who can go and do fun stuff like skiing in Japan with me. And a part of that goes towards the charity and bringing exciting, interesting people together who have the same mindset as me, right? Where they want to create a business beyond making money that impacts the world for good, but they want to have fun while they're doing it, right? And so that's ultimately what I'm trying to build. So that's what I'm up to. That, you know, that's a 5-year goal. Maybe I'll do it sooner. Maybe it will take longer. People often overestimate what they can do short term, underestimate what they can do long term, right?
Yeah, exactly. That sounds incredible. You're going to certainly be busy, Sebastian, and I can't wait to follow your progress as you go through that. If any of the listeners want to learn a little bit more about you, I know you've got a couple of books out there, and where's the best places for them to find out a bit more about what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I do one podcast a week. So if you want to book me for a podcast, you can email ea@sebastianbates.com, and Sarah will help you with that. For business mentoring, I mentor about 300 business owners a year. And if you go to sebastianbates.com, you can have a look at the mentoring I do there. Lots of reviews and testimonials there as well. If you're interested in the Warrior Academy, one of the best places to start is going to breakthrougharea.com and doing the breakthrough area assessment, which I mentioned earlier. We've also got warrioracademy.ae and warrioracademy.co.uk. And you can find me on Instagram. So seb.bates on Instagram, or Sebastian Bates on LinkedIn, or even on Facebook, every platform I'm on. So if you just search for me, hopefully something interesting that you will align with will pop up.
That's awesome. And I'll pop the links into the show notes as well when I get them off you after, Sebastian.
Amazing.
Can I just say thanks so much, mate? I really appreciate what you've gone through. I know you're super busy and you've probably got another walk to get on now. But there's some real value in that. And I think it's nice to have someone from not a construction background to come in and just talk to us about business and purpose and resilience and habits and everything we've gone through. I think there's a tremendous lot of value. So really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, mate.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.